some of you would know that I am in a specialization for disaster resilience leadership in terms of a postgraduate certificate for disaster resilience leadership. And I was in a session where we were learning how to conduct tabletop exercises. Tabletop exercises are where you simulate the scenario of a disaster, and now you are responding. So based on whoever your respondents are, we are informing now the process of how it's going to unfold with these responders. In that group, I am the only woman who looks like me. I'm the only woman of color. Everyone else in that group, that entire class of professionals, are Caucasian. And if you know about social, we were talking about social and human factors. It has a lot to do with, in the US, it has a lot to do with race and culture. So race discussions, racism, segregation, disadvantage, displacement, all those things came up through discussions. And I could tell that my colleagues were feeling a bit uneasy because they had to talk, we had to talk about these issues, and I was in the room and I am a woman of color. Do you know that as I also felt overwhelmed by the discourse, because I'm of Caribbean origin and I don't, except for what I read, I don't really feel, I don't know the journey much of the American Black woman or the American Black people, except for what I read and what I hear. So I was overwhelmed by I could feel their discomfort, and it's like I was carrying the whole nation on my shoulder that I didn't even know about. Let me hasten to tell you that when I prayed about it, God directed me to lean in on my own experiences. I shared with them because, again, as a leader, you're given the mic at some point. So when I was given the opportunity to speak, because, you know, there are periods of time where you have to respond and so on, I was able to share with them. This is in the preparation phase of the tabletops, by the way. So I was able to share with them that I am a woman of Caribbean origin. So they figured out before that something was different about me because I sound different. And I can't tell you how much times I almost bite my tongue trying to enunciate words so that they will not be lost or confused when I'm speaking. So it is very deliberate for me sometimes to articulate clearly so that those around me would understand clearly. And they're like, oh, you have such a beautiful accent. And I'm like, yo, I'm here trying to talk clear. All right. So I said to them, I'm from the Caribbean. I explained to them what part of the Caribbean. And I also shared with them some research on the difference between the Caribbean origin of the African slave trade and the American, and now how there is a difference in the culture, and there's also a difference in this place with the Caribbean person and how the Caribbean person is perceived, and the African American person and how the African American person is perceived. And they were flabbergasted. They were flabbergasted because they had not known. Because when you see someone, think for instance of another culture outside of yours. When you see someone from that culture, think of any culture outside of yours. All you know is that you label them as Black. That's them. That person is Asian. That person is Nigerian. That person is Indian. That person, you do not understand the full story. And what I'm saying to us is people will continue to be misguided and judge us wrong if we are not able to speak our story and to share the who am I. Secondly, I was able to lean in on my own experiences. So when we talked about tabletop and, you know, they were like, oh, how do we now deal with the disasters, and they're talking about disasters that happened in America. And that university really came about, that program, because of Hurricane Katrina, which they faced in Louisiana. And I said, you know what? I know about Katrina based on what I read and saw on TV, but what I know for sure about is Hurricanes Irma and Maria. I lived through those two hurricanes back to back, Category 5, while I lived in St. Thomas. And so I was able to lean in on my experience and mirror that over now to the discourse on preparing for tabletop exercises, preparing for simulations, talking about the effects of hurricanes, and so on and so forth. I was able to talk about different types of disasters, because in Tobago we had an oil spill last year, and we had the first earliest storm ever of rapid intensification, Hurricane Beryl, right? It didn't hit Tobago, thank God. And won't you believe that through that experience of me opening up, of me sharing, standing in who I am, that I was appointed as the head or the lead of my group presentation, to lead my group presentation. Of course, everybody would participate and make their contributions, but I was asked to lead the presentation. So that is my story. And I'm sure that some of you have similar stories where, when indeed you stood your ground to help others to understand who you are, where you're from, and why you deserve to be there, and the experiences that validate your knowledge, that indeed you are able to show up strong, confident, and trusted to lead. Yeah. When faced with new territories, remember that God can still give you dominion, but you have to lean in on your own strengths and you have to represent yourself. Be who you are. It's either they accept you or not. Be who you are.